So what's been the hardest part about building a gun company?
The hardest part about building a gun company? It's been 9 months since the acquisition of buying Thompson Center back from Smith & Wesson. So if you go back in time, 2007, Smith & Wesson purchased Thompson Center from myself and the other investors. And a lot transpired during that 15 years that they had the company. And a lot of dynamics have changed in the marketplace as well. So think about it in this respect. In 2007, Smith & Wesson purchased the company in January. In June, Steve Jobs released the first iPhone. So that gives you a perspective of where we were and how the company went to market and how you communicated and how we communicate today. And during that time frame, the technology that's changed in manufacturing as well. Now, during that time period, I stayed connected with the Thompson Center brand. I was an ambassador until 2021 when Smith & Wesson decided to prioritize the Smith & Wesson products, and they basically hit the pause button on Thompson Center and everything that was being made. So from a product standpoint, I stayed connected with the brand, but from an operational standpoint, I didn't know how Smith & Wesson was producing barrels, how they were making receivers, how they were building guns, how they were staffing, because all of that was moved from Rochester to Springfield back in 2010. What I thought I knew coming into this, right? Okay, so we acquire it. It was April 12th of 2024. Was dramatically different than what I know now, because it dramatically changed in that time period that Smith & Wesson operated TC in Springfield. Culturally it changes, processes changed, but what a lot of people don't realize, when we purchased Thompson Center back, it was really an intellectual property purchase. Patents, trademarks, copyrights, things of that nature, which are all really valuable. But what we didn't have was the manufacturing piece. So the majority of the equipment, all of the people were redirected to building Smith & Wesson products. And of course, any specific equipment, gauges, tooling, things of that nature hadn't been used since 2021. And you could, if you don't use something for that period of time, it gets dusty, broken, things, tend to get lost, what have you. So we really didn't know what all we were getting other than the intellectual property piece. Now, there's a good piece to that and there's a challenging piece to that. The good piece is we ended up getting 64 tractor trailer loads of stuff, over 4 million parts. But there's a lot of things that were valuable in what came up from Smith & Wesson, specifically gauges, toolings, and fixtures, things that we used to build the product. And then there were some parts and pieces that we could use, springs and screws and fasteners and, some hammer bodies and things of that nature. But all of that had to be gone through. So what I thought I knew in April is dramatically different than what I know now. And if you were to ask me, if you knew in April what you know now, would you have still done it? The answer is yes. How I would have applied the resources may have been different, because in my mind, if you have a recipe, okay, so call that your ingredients list would be your bill of materials. These are all the parts that go into making an Encore. This is the first gun that we're putting actually into inventory right now. So Encore frames, Encore barrels, all made in Rochester, New Hampshire, going into inventory as we're having this conversation now. Amazing feat in 9 months. I thought we could do it in 6 or 7 months. And what I realize now, that was such a tall task. It was so aggressive to think. And I don't want to say it was, arrogance or it was ignorance or it was anything other than that was the hope, that was the dream, that was the understanding. And to me, if I had the same engineers and the same designers and a lot of the same people, which none of this is possible without, absolutely not. Without these core group of Thompson Center people who worked for the company for, 15, 18, 30 years, we wouldn't be in this situation today. But what we didn't realize is rebuilding all of those processes in this new state takes a lot of time. And I think they're created a lot of internal challenges and expectations and frustrations along the way, because what we thought would be easy was not as easy as we expected. Here's a perfect example for you. Supply chain, right? Vendors that we did business with, have relations with for 18, 20, 30 years. You make that first phone call and you call a vendor and you say, hey, we just purchased a company back. We'd like to start up. Fantastic. Love to work with you. Great. We'll send you a credit app. We've done business for like 30 years. They treated us like a new vendor, as they should. But going into this, you would think you can make that phone call, have that relationship. But, we're having to set every one of these vendors up. And there's a lot of vendors. I don't know, 50, 60 different vendors for all aspects of the gun that have to be, brought back online. Now, a lot of these also had tooling and processes and things of that nature that they may have had that needed to be revisited. And things were thrown away, things were discarded, because when Smith & Wesson stopped purchasing product or announced to the marketplace that they were shutting down, these operations, a lot of this stuff isn't kept around. A lot of it was, which is good and added to the speed of the marketplace. But just getting the vendors back online took a lot longer than I thought it would. And this is with the commitment from the vendors. And I will tell you, without those vendors, like I said, there's a long list of them, we wouldn't be here today. We would still be trying to figure out what to do. Because fortunately, they understood the processes. They had tribal knowledge that they retained inside their organizations, whether it was making stocks or screw machine parts. Simple things like a breech plug. You would think, making a breech plug is easy, right? Here's a print. It's not that easy, especially Speed Breech XT, right? Because the interrupted thread design that is on there, the patented design of that whole product, you'll think, okay, well, you just hand that to a vendor, they can make it. It doesn't work that way. So they had to go back through, they had to redo their processes, and then the gauges that it takes to make sure that breech plug that you make would fit all the Encore Speed Breech barrels ever made, or the Triumph barrels ever made. Because the modular design, and this was a commitment that we made to everybody in the marketplace, was every barrel made today for an Encore would fit every frame made since 1997. Every Contender barrel made today will fit every frame since 1967, and vice versa, right? New frames today will fit older barrels. And breech plugs today will fit older model guns, and newer model guns can fit with older model breech plugs. So all of those that recipe had to be revisited and gone through. So number one thing I learned is people are everything. You have to have quality people committed to it, and without our core group at TC, and without our core group at the vendors, it wouldn't happen. We wouldn't be in this position today. And it really tells you the value of those relationships. So every day, we're in the fight of the battle, and things don't seem to be going right. Just keeping everybody focused on the task on hand and focused to the goal line, and celebrating those little victories along the way are so important, because time goes by so quickly. And now that we're putting product in the warehouse, it's a monumental win for the team, because now, once that product gets out to the marketplace, I know what you're going to say. When's the Contender coming out? When are other barrel configurations coming out? How about this caliber? Hey, when are you going to bring the Icon back out? When are you going to bring the Venture back out? We follow social media, right? We listen. That's one of the advantages we have today, right? Is we can hear your opinion instantaneously, and trying to respond to all of that. So when I think about another challenge, right, other than getting the suppliers going and getting the product going, again, that's just on one product, the Encore. How about redoing the brand? What does it take? So you think, you want to do the logo again. You want to refresh that. You want to create a style guide. How's that style going to apply to letterhead and business cards and packaging and boxes? All of those, owner's manuals, everything has to be revisited. Things have changed. Prop 65, you guys probably don't even know what that is unless you live in California. That's a requirement that packaging, that warning label has to be on all of the guns and all the packages. Okay, it's got to be larger than this and has to be in this specific color. Like learning all of these government regulations again and bringing them up to speed. So it's not just getting an FFL. That in itself takes months and months and months, apply for the application and go through the process and finally have the on-site visits. And the ATF was fantastic. They wanted to see us back in business, which was great. We had their support. But it goes well beyond that with all the state regulations that have to be understood in the investment with attorneys and going through all this paperwork. So think of this from the marketing perspective. All of that has to come together at the same time that you're building the tangible product. Because as you know, we made a commitment to you that we wanted to communicate and be as transparent as possible during the process. So that's why we created this YouTube series. That was the sole driving force, was to document the building of a gun company. And now we're going to share with you some of the challenges that we had to overcome. And it's nice because I can sit on this side of the lens now and smile because products the Encores are going into inventory. Like with the damn rope, we got the recipe out, and the gun now is better than it ever was. So having a commitment to quality, an unwavering commitment to quality, making it better today than it was ever made in the past. Okay, whether that's Smith & Wesson or Thompson Center originally back in Rochester, New Hampshire. We have technology today we didn't have in the past. Right? We have machines that can do things. So take an Encore barrel, and if you're familiar with an Encore barrel, so you have the barrel, you have a lug on the bottom, and obviously you have an extractor, and you whether it's a muzzleloader with the speed breech that goes into it, or you have a chamber. In the past, those were multiple operations, right? So you would do the bore work, right? And then once you have the bore done in the barrel, right, then you'd have to go profile the barrel, then you'd weld the lug on the barrel, and then all the secondary operations that go on. If you're a machinist, if you're a mechanic, if you're a gun enthusiast, you understand what goes into that, because that hinge pin hole and that relation to the breech face and the chamber and where the extractor goes, all of those dimensions, because you're interchangeable, are super tight. And in the past, we would have multiple operations that would go through and to do these various operations, the hinge pin hole and the extractor slot, face off the breech, chamber it, so on and so forth. We're able to do that now in one machine. So the quality of what we're making, so our chambers are better, our hinge pin locations are just everything is a better product. But that was the commitment that when we sat down with a white piece of paper, right, and said, if we were to build the best Encore today, knowing what we know about the Encore and utilizing the best technology available, how would we do it? And sitting with the engineers and gun designers and literally whiteboarding it and saying, okay, this is how we believe we'd make it today, knowing what we know. That comes with a very expensive check. Remember, we didn't buy an ongoing company. We didn't buy brick and mortar. A lot of people think we did, and I really hope that you reflect on that. Like, we didn't buy machines and processes and ERP systems and walk in and basically turn the lights on, put the power to the machines, and it starts spitting parts out. Every machine had to be purchased. Every tool had to be purchased. Every program had to be written into those machines to tell them what to do. So none of that was information or things that we were able to get out of Smith & Wesson, because they repurposed all of that for Smith & Wesson product. And we knew that going into it, by the way. So we knew we had to make that investment, but the time it takes to go run a part, measure the part, realize the part's not exactly where it needs to be, build the gauges, build the fixtures, build the tooling. And not only that, you had to build a process. You had to start ultimately with a raw piece of metal, right? So let's take the investment casting. Fortunately, Thompson Investment Castings was our partner in the process of this, where we've been working out of their facility. Now we're in our own facility, and we still share space with them because it makes sense to do a lot of the castings to finish parts inside of their facility. So you start with molten metal, right? And you make the castings. Now the molds are already done, which was great. Tyler Stone and his team at TIC had kept all of those molds. So we were able to revisit those molds, build the castings, but then we have to go machine all of those castings. So every step of the way, so again, you start with a bill of material, that's your ingredients, right? But you need a recipe. The recipe is every operation that you do. So now that casting goes into, we call it Op 1 in the CNC machine. So you put it in Op 1 and it goes through and it creates the external profile of the receiver. Now, the advantage of a casting is it's a near net shape. So you can look at the receiver in its raw form and you can see that it looks like an Encore receiver. But there's a lot of processes that have to go on. So Op 1, we go and we program the machine and we look, we go, okay, we could do a better job on this, a better job on that. And we start ordering custom tooling to get the shape absolutely perfect. And so it's just not something that you buy off the shelf. Everything has to be customized to that specific part, to how we want it to look, how we want it to operate, how it has to interface with all the other parts. And so we go through Op 1, right, and that takes over a month. And then it goes into Op 2, and then Op 3, and Op 4. You put all that together, well, now 6 months went by just in the machining of the Encore receiver. Even though we know how to ride the bike, we had to learn how to re-ride the bike. And then once all of that's, R&D'd, right, and we figure it out, well, then we have to go build the work instructions and build the routings. And basically, you have to break this dam, let the water flow to the next dam. So then, okay, so now that we figured out how are we going to heat treat this area on the receiver, okay, we figured that. Now, how are we going to temper it? So then we figure out how we're going to temper it, then how we're going to metal finish it. And all of those things, it just takes time and it takes patience and it takes commitment, because the commitment we made was we're going to have the best quality that we've had in the past, because everything we ship out is going to have a lifetime warranty. And the expectation that we have is when you purchase this, you may be using this 50 years from now, 60 years from now, which would not be unusual. There's people now shooting a Contender handgun or carbine back, made in the late 60s or early 70s. A lot of those barrels for sure are still in service. So relearning all those processes was almost overwhelming and sometimes frustrating, because you did it before, right? It was just a matter of time on how to conquer it. Same way with the barrels. We knew the commitment we needed out of the barrel, both from the finish quality inside the barrel. We use 5R rifling, right? Thompson Center was the first company to commercialize 5R rifling. That was never done in Contender and Encore barrels. So you think, oh, it's very simple. Well, special buttons have to be ordered, and then you have to understand the speeds and feeds. So we partnered with the Green Mountain Barrel Company. It's an hour north of us in Conway, New Hampshire. Now, we had our strategic relationship with them since the 70s. We helped develop a lot of those processes. People worked at Thompson Center, still work today at Green Mountain, phenomenal people. Make one of the best barrels, if not the best in the marketplace. But getting everybody together to say, if we're going to make this Thompson Center barrel and it's got to shoot more accurately or as good as before, how are we going to do it? And there's a certain amount of just trial and error that has to go on as you develop these processes. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't fully comprehend the time it was going to take to go through that. A lot of what I thought would be easy, we broke the dam, right? So, this should be really easy. Qualify this surface, right? Metal finishing, what have you. We had to go rebuild those recipes. Some things went quicker than others, and some, welding a lug on the barrel, you would think, you welded literally millions, right? Well, how do we do that today better than we've done it before? So challenging those processes and making them better were something that we committed to ourselves, and I'm happy to say we never let up. We never said it's good enough. Not once did anyone ever say. So if it wasn't perfect, we didn't do it. So those are a lot of the challenges. And I guess looking back, I don't think anyone understood kind of the scope of what we were trying to do, because Thompson Center is 60 years old. It's an iconic brand, has millions of followers, millions of users out there. So when we hit the lights and say, go, we're shipping products, you're going from zero to a very large company overnight. So it's not like somebody who's starting a new business and, okay, we start small and we add a couple people, we add a couple processes, we add a new product line, right? It's like we have to start and be at the same level of quality, delivery, customer support, right? All of that, when you turn the lights on, so building that infrastructure, right, before cash flow. So we have burned a lot of cash doing this. We knew what we were going to do. We committed to it. We're very well capitalized, right? Because we knew what it was going to take. So that piece we definitely got right, but it's still really tough when you spend 9 months, right, writing checks and buying equipment and paying for workers and buying tooling and all of this. And there's that little bit of, is it really gonna work? Right? You can't help but try to suppress that. And what really kept us focused and kept it going? It's social media. It's the DMs. It's the response. Every single DM was read. It was responded to. It was answered. So Sean Davies, who handles our social media and creative on all of this, and really she helped reshape the whole brand, we would spend hours together, read the question, answer the question, respond to the person. And a lot of these, as you know, because you were some of those people, you would then have another question and then another question. And we tried to be as responsive as possible, right? But there's thousands of you, literally thousands. But that was the commitment to that customer service that I was talking about. It all starts with the communication piece before the product ever got there. And of course, the longer you spend ramping up and the longer you spend getting product out there, well, guess what? Those questions multiply, and then people use guns and they have more questions. But the great part of it is we learned a lot. What calibers you want to see, what guns you want to see come back. I will tell you, like the Hawken, for example. The Hawken muzzleloader was on our future to-do list, right? Well, maybe 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, we'll get back into tradition, because that's the core of our roots, right? The Hawken was the first muzzleloader we did back in 1972. Actually, back in 1970, 72 was when Jeremiah Johnson came out and it really exploded and became popular worldwide. But because of your feedback, we're now taking that timeline and we're now shifting that up and trying to get that out by 26 or 27 because of that feedback, which we really value. So all of that interaction, building that infrastructure just to communicate with you is, it takes a lot. But it's really beneficial in how to rebuild the company, because we're building product for you, right? We're not building product for ourselves. We're building product for you. So trying to answer those questions and do what we need to do is really driven by your feedback. One of the other overwhelming feedback loops we have, other than the customer, right? Your feedback is the industry. It's the Hornadys and Federals and Winchesters. It's the Loopholes and Vortex and Swarovskis, right? It's other gun companies, right? It's Smith & Wesson was instrumental in helping us getting restarted, right? The feedback from Ruger, the help from Traditions, right? Everybody in this industry rallied behind it. And that's just how this hunting community is. It's a small group of people. And we've all been committed to raising the tide, and we all benefit from it. Yes, we want to edge out our competition, have a better product, have a better go-to-market strategy. But at the end of the day, we just want to see the industry healthy and having that overwhelming support. When you go into SHOT Show, we didn't have a booth, right? I just walked the floor and got a chance to visit with a lot of these partners, and having people say, congratulations, glad you're back in it, you're great for the industry, look at the momentum you're providing. All of those things give you that support mechanism you need to get restarted, but it also creates a lot of momentum for your company within the industry. Just because we build great product or we market great product, the product still has to get to the retailer shelves. So we wanted to develop and are developing and will continue to develop authorized retailers. So brick and mortar stores that have regular hours, have a sales force, agree to in-store training, agree to stock the product. So when you go in, you can talk to somebody who's just not going to have a transactional relationship with you. We want that person behind the counter to be skilled and to understand our product line and be able to work with you to give you the best experience when you purchase that product. So you take thousands of dealers that now you have to work with. So now creating the sales force, which we did. We interviewed all the sales agencies out there. We picked what we felt were the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the people committed to working with the retailers to be able to make sure the right product was on the shelf for the retailer and they were trained. So when you went in, you could have a good experience. Or if you need technical support, warranty help, that somebody was there to help you. So all of this is going on simultaneously. It's not like, hey, let's make the product over here, then we're going to figure out how we're going to market and brand it, then we're going to figure out how to sell it. It all has to converge at the same time. And all of those moving pieces got to be overwhelming. You know, there were days that there's just not enough hours in the day. I mean, you just knew when you shut your eyes, you were going to open your eyes 4 or 5 hours later, and it was go the rest of the day for the next 14 to 16 hours just to try to get all of this done, because we wanted to make sure we got product out as quickly as possible so we would have enough out in the dealer base for the upcoming hunting season. What we didn't realize, that there was such a pent-up demand for specifically the Encore platform, and we hear it on the other platforms as well, because it had been out of the marketplace for so long, and it's such an iconic product because it's so modular, and there's so many new cartridges that have come out, and so many changes in how people hunt and shoot. People now want higher pressure cartridges, shorter barrels, ability to be suppressed. There's a higher demand for accuracy than ever before because the ammunition has gotten so much better. The shooters have gotten so much better. The shooting accessories have gotten so much better. And, you know, it created such a high bar to re-enter the marketplace. And, you know, we had to stay, you know, committed to all of that at the same time, knowing that we had to provide that customer service and experience to you along the way. So that commitment to quality and innovation had to be there, because we didn't just want to bring the Encore back out and say, oh, here's the Encore. How can we do it better? We could go to 5R rifling, okay? How can we make it more user-friendly today? Well, we should probably thread it for suppressors, okay? Change the barrel lengths to be more relevant to today's user. How can we make a better trigger? Okay, there's some processes I'm not going to share with you that we did to make a better trigger, but there's also some things like nitride coating the trigger and the sear, right, to give you a better experience when shooting. And then on the firing pin bushing, for those people who do shoot muzzleloader and go back and forth between muzzleloader and centerfire shotgun, not having that corrosion around the firing pin and the bushing, so those are nitride coated. So all of those little things had to be factored into the relaunch. So you're redesigning, relaunching, bringing it back on, managing a brand, establishing a supply chain, and then trying to figure out how to get to market with the best customer service possible. Whew. It was a lot. But the great thing is, once we've gone through this one cycle, now the Encores are flowing, right? And we're making, you know, hundreds a week now. Thousands in a month. Now we can go tackle the Contender, and then the Triumph, and then the Icon. You guys are going to love the new Icon, by the way. We're now modernizing even that platform more from an aesthetic and usability standpoint. Weight for sure. And that's going to come out in December. So those things take months and months and months to design, R&D, prototype, test, rebuild molds, things of that nature. So we haven't forgotten about the innovation side. And that's not even talking about what's on the drawing board for 2026 and 27. So we're just getting started. Learning how this process works. This has been a labor of love to now. It's been a dream. And if anybody had told me it was going to be this hard in April, I'd say you're crazy. I said, we're going to flip a light switch. This is easy. It wasn't easy. Was it worth it? 100%. Are you going to love the product? Without a doubt. Are we going to continue the legacy of Thompson Center? No question.